Hello, my name is Peter Parfitt. Welcome to the new Brit workshop. Have you ever tried to inlay one piece of wood into another, as I've done here? I've got three different bits of wood which I've inlaid into this larger piece. And in order to do this, you need an inlay kit, and I've got one here made by Whiteside of the United States and distributed here in the United Kingdom by Writer Cutter UK. And this is what you get in the kit. You get the guide bush, which is made of solid brass, and it's in three pieces. There's this piece which fits onto the base of the writer, and it's retained in place with this ring here which screws onto the bottom. The bush size here can be increased using this third component, which just pushes straight on like so to change the diameter of the bush itself. And then you get this 1/4 inch diameter solid carbide spiral upcut cutter, which again is on a 1/4 inch shaft. And there is a very straightforward set of instructions included. Now, the key to making all of this work is to make sure you've got the right base fitting in your writer so that it will accept the Whiteside guide bush. Now, it was my thought when I first heard about this that it would fit snugly into the adapter that one uses for the Lee dovetail jig, and this is the one I've got for my OF 1400, and this is the one I've got for my OF 1010 writers from Festool. Now, when I first got this, I found that the thread on here was just a dash too big, by less than 1/3 of a millimetre, and it wouldn't quite fit in. So what I did was to take off this extra piece of the guide bush here and put that carefully to one side, and then I put this in my drill press very, very carefully and tightened that up so it's properly in place, and I then used a very fine file and I just turned it on and very gently filed off a tiny bit off that thread, and it was literally a tiny bit. And as soon as I did that, I found that this fitted absolutely perfectly in the Lee dovetail jig guide bush. Now, as part of the kit there is a centering pin, and it's got a 1/4 inch shaft, and I'm going to fit that in my writer now, and I'm going to plunge that and lock that tight. I'm now going to slip on the Lee adapter plate, which has got the Whiteside guide bush on it, and I can now put in the two screws, this one a bit more, and then this one all the way. That one's nice and tight, and that one's nice and tight. Now that has now centred the whole assembly onto the writer collet. I can now release this and remove the centering pin. Now you may find that once you've got that adapter plate fitted, that the only way to get the centering pin out is to actually take the whole collet out as well. And whilst you've got the tools in your hand, you might just as well at this point put the actual cutter in, and it's the same process as we had before. And that's that cutter firmly fitted. And there are loads of ways that you can make up your own templates just using some MDF and a jigsaw and a drill. Or you can buy templates ready-made, like this one, which I think is featured in one of my earlier videos a while ago. Now, with this demonstration, I've got a piece of wood here into which I want to place an inlay, and the one I've chosen is this central fully curved one here. And I've set the writer up. It's got the cutter in, it's got the guide bush, and it's got the removable ring fitted in place, because the first thing we're going to do is to cut out the recess into which the inlay will go into. Now, I've put the writer in position and I've plunged it so that the cutter is just touching the surface of the wood that we're going to cut through the template. and like so, and I've set to 0 the plunge gauge here. I'm going to do it in 2 stages. I want to do a cut which is 7 millimeters in depth. So I'm going to do 3.5 followed by another 3.5. So we're not taking too much out at a time. And the reason I'm doing it in 2 stages is that the cutter is solid carbide and is quite brittle. So one needs to treat these sort of cutters with some respect. Now I'm now going to raise my plunge adjuster up by 3.5 millimeters to there, and now I'm all set to do the cut. So there's that first pass. It's made a nice clean job around there, and so now I'm going to do my final depth of 7 millimeters. So there's that little cutout. It's very neat. Now it came from this way round, and note for all of my templates I've got a sort of circle and a cross. It's important because the templates might not be absolutely symmetrical. It's important to note which way round they are. So I've just put a circle and a cross on my piece of wood. Now this is the material I'm going to use for the insert piece, and I'm going to position it on a piece of sacrificial wood here so that I don't damage the surface of my dear old MFT3 any further. Now I want to cut this template out from this corner, so I'm making it such that I can hold the template in place about here. This piece of wood will support this end of this piece of MDF, and I'll use a clamp there. But when we cut away the piece which will become the insert, it will be free to go anywhere. So underneath this section, I'm going to put a little bit of double-sided sticky tape. Now, I've found in the past that double-sided sticky tape is pretty good for these sort of tasks, particularly when you've got a clamp somewhere up here helping out as well. Now, I'm satisfied that that template's not going anywhere, and that centre piece is going to be held in there reasonably well with the double-sided tape. Now, for cutting out the actual insert piece, which we're about to do, you need to remove this little brass bush, and you need to put that carefully to one side. You don't want to lose it. It just pushes on and off, and initially it's going to be quite stiff because there's a little brand new O-ring on the inside there. Now, we're now going to be doing the cut around here. We've got to make sure at all times that this brass bush here is in contact with the side of the template. Otherwise, we'll be cutting into the piece that we want to have as our inlay. So we've got to be really careful from now on. That's our first one of these done, and if I remove this, you can see that we're left with this piece, and don't forget to mark the circle and the cross just in case, and let's see if that fits. Just a little bit of a gap there, and I'm not quite sure why. That's down to me. It's not down to the gadget itself. So we'll try this again and see if I'm better on my second go. But actually, for a first go, I'm rather pleased with that. Okay, so this is the duff bit. Obviously, I've made some sort of slip up there, but the rest of it is absolutely perfect. So I'm going to have one more practice go at this one and see if I can make it a little better. Well, I've applied a bit of glue underneath there, and I'm now going to just tap this in. And I'm going to put a clamp on there because the glue underneath at the moment is exerting a little bit of hydraulic pressure. I want to push it in now so that the glue gets right in to the corners. And there we go. Now, you have to believe me when I say that that is almost flush. It's probably about 1/4 millimetre because I can just feel it with the edge of my finger. But actually at this stage one would want to sand it down anyway. But I think that is pretty good. And that's pretty reasonable, really. It's one of my best yet. That was a piece of 10mm thick veneered MDF. That veneer is walnut. So I'm pleased with that. Well, I've done 3 of these now, and I've sanded it down, and I've put a bit of wax on there just to bring the grain out so it gives a bit of contrast. And I'm really pleased with these because you can see there's virtually no sign of any gap. And at this stage, if there were a small gap, you could easily put a bit of filler in there just to finish the job off. Now, I found out what happened when the first one of this shape went wrong. Basically what I was doing was I was cutting around here and the dust wasn't being taken away properly, and so it was building up on the inside of the template. So as I was cutting, I was following not the edge of the template but the edge of the build-up of dust, and so therefore the piece I cut out was slightly smaller than it should have been. And this is how that happened. Now, this is my beautiful Festool router, and it's got the most superb dust collection. However, we're expecting a bit much of it in this case because the dust collection is actually going through the gap between the cutter and the inside of this part of the bushing. And some of the dust was caking on the inside of the bushing here, and that stopped the extraction flow altogether. So there are 2 ways of dealing with it, and what I was doing was to take the centering pin and every now and again just push it through there to clear off the caked on dust, and that worked pretty well. And the second way I'm thinking about is to drill 2 or 3 holes in this flat part of the brass here so that there's an alternate path for the extraction debris to go. And now I've added those extra few holes there to aid the dust extraction, and it hasn't altered the integrity of the guide bush at all. I'm perfectly happy that that's going to function exactly as it should. I just had a go using it with my modified base plate here with the extra holes, and it seems to have made some difference, and so I think that's quite a reasonable thing to try. And I'm just going to see. Yeah, that fit looks pretty good. I'm going to glue that one in, and that will be the last one that we do. And there we go, that's the last one done. Well, I hope this has been useful. You can see that this inlay work is pretty easy to do. I'm very grateful for Router Company UK for sending this kit to me so I can demonstrate it to you. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.